Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Gagan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and you are listening to the Networking RX podcast. I have a repeat guest on today. Today with me is Christina Providence. She's a Gestalt professional certified coach, and she works with women experts and entrepreneurs to help them launch a profitable online group mentorship program that they can attach to their existing business or grow as a primary stream of income. Welcome back. If you've been and I'll let Christina jump in here real quick, but if you've been a long-time listener, we had a program that Christina and I released back in June. We're actually going to tape this one, talk about this. We're going to talk about Facebook groups, which is a love of hers, maybe not a love. But we got on the topic of talking about anti-racism. It was right on the heels of the George Floyd killing and just the racial unrest. And so we decided to tape on that. But I got her to come back, and she's going to talk about Facebook groups with us. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about your business, how you use Facebook, or the difference between groups and pages, and secrets you have for creating groups of engaged fans.
Sure.
Fire away.
Absolutely. Well, I think, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure, as always, to be here and talk with you, Frank. And you mentioned Facebook groups as a love. And it's funny, I don't probably have any more love for Facebook than anybody else, but what I do love is the community that is my group. I run a Facebook group called Ready to Launch, a creative incubator for women entrepreneurs, and it is my favorite place to be online. And it's not because of the platform, but it's because of the people that I get to engage with and support and learn from, and just the energy and the joy and the creativity in the community. And so that's really, that's kind of the key piece of Facebook groups in general, which is what we're here to talk about, is that this is kind of a magical moment right now for Facebook groups. And it's funny because so many people are, I think most people are on Facebook, first of all. Most people above a certain age have a Facebook account.
Right.
And as much as, we have different opinions and mixed feelings about Facebook, most of us are there. And Facebook has created Facebook groups as a way to get people together. And when we talk about using Facebook groups in business, there's an infinite number of ways that we can use them. But I think one of the key pieces that it's important to know and to talk about is that, first of all, groups are different from pages. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But the magic of Facebook groups in particular, that's different from any other platform, any other social media channel, or any other function on Facebook itself, is that a Facebook group is a closed community. And people, you can invite people ask to join, but within the community of a Facebook group, whoever is the admin or the moderator of the group gets to facilitate and determine the culture of the group. And so it's a place online where you can create a community of people with shared values who are communicating with each other, who are sharing opinions, sharing support, having conversations. And it's really just very, very different from any other social media platform or social media channel. So it's not Facebook itself that I love, but it's what comes from it. It's the result of the group and the result of that, that sort of community of shared values and the reach of it, that, you know, this is a place where people can easily gather from all over the world and talk about things that they have in common.
Now we're still in the throes of COVID, and maybe for some time, and we don't necessarily need to get into that, but it's really kind of playing into these sorts of communities.
Yeah.
You know, and people don't have the same options. I've talked to a lot of people who are like, well, the networking groups I used to go to aren't there. They're not meeting anymore. So I need to figure out something else. And this can be this something else. So.
It is. It's a really good option that's on the table.
Yeah.
And, you know, you and I were talking before we hit record, and one of the things that we were talking about is that I've been a coach for several years, and I've had my business for over 20 years at this point. And up until recently, when I supported business owners and supported entrepreneurs, it was from a much more general perspective. I just, part of my background, I've had a Pilates, I have a background in dance and a background, for almost 20 years, I worked as a standardized test prep instructor. So the test prep teaching was my day job, and the art and the dance was my great love and my great passion, and also my academic training, because I have a graduate degree in that. And for years and years and years, they were two separate worlds. But about 10 years ago, I opened a Pilates studio, and I found that all the, you know, sort of like my work life, my, you know, for lack of a better word, revenue generating work life,
right,
as a test prep instructor and at the corporate level with that organization, really went into the running of the business. And then my background as a dancer went into delivering my services and supporting my clients. And over time, I found that I really resonated with high performers. I really resonated with people who were ready for a change and wanting to develop themselves for greater capacity and greater creativity, and kind of moved into entrepreneurship. And began I didn't find the niche found me, but I found my way into supporting entrepreneurs a few years ago, specifically. And it was only in March of this year, when we all went on lockdown where we live, and that I specifically started focusing on online entrepreneurs, and a lot of entrepreneurs who are small business owners of brick and mortar or service-based businesses that were wanting to bring their services online, or wanting to build out or develop their online offerings. And you know, like a lot of people, I had been online for a long time. I had been delivering services online, but from a marketing perspective, I hadn't really been just specifically focusing on bringing online entrepreneurs into my own business. But there we all were, right?
Yeah.
And here I have been for years. So I sort of felt like people were kind of coming to me at that point, and I had some support to offer and some experience. And that is what really brought me into mentoring people around. I mean, I don't mentor people around Facebook groups specifically. It's a tool and it's a piece of the big puzzle.
Right.
But it is that thing that you're saying about, you know, all of a sudden we've been thrust into this very different circumstance than most of us have been in. And if we're already on Facebook, then here we are, and we're thinking, okay, what can we do to replace what we used to do? What can we do to replace the in-person connection or to facilitate it? And that's a lot of what led to my particular focus on Facebook groups, but also our this cultural moment is that we're all shifting, you know, all the platforms are experiencing a shift, and all of us are looking for that fit, and that, you know, how can we use what we have that's very, a much more limited set of tools in some ways, but also an expanded awareness of the online tools, and use what we've got to still get what we need, and hopefully get some of what we want as well.
Yeah, well, I think I certainly think so in time. How do you use your group to, I guess quickly, let's make a distinction between group and page, but then how do you implement a networking strategy with respect to, your group?
Yeah. So real quick, the difference between the group and the page. So a Facebook page is an official entity. A personal page is your personal place, right? Your profile. And a business page is like a profile for your business. So it's like an identity piece, and you can post on your business page just like you can for your personal profile, and it's kind of like a news feed type stream.
Mm-hmm.
And people can sort of subscribe by liking the page. It's a different thing from a Facebook group. So a Facebook group is a place for small group communication. So rather than being a profile, it's actually a place. It's like a container. And groups that in general can be on any topic. So, we have groups for people who are doing Couch to 5K. We have groups for people who are fans of Outlander TV series. We have Facebook groups for Pokemon, or for every kind of car you can imagine, and every hobby, whatever, every line of work, real estate agents, and, entrepreneurs in general, and online entrepreneurs in particular, women entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs, advanced entrepreneurs, everything.
Right.
And so the group is really about collecting these people who have some sort of shared interest. And eventually it becomes a place where people have not just the same interest, but some common ground in terms of shared values. And then, over time, what develops is a culture within the group. And so it's different from the identity piece of the page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So networking strategy.
Yeah. So networking strategy. So you look at outside the group and inside the group, right? And then where do people go from the group? So outside the group, some people are a fit for the group and some people aren't.
Sure.
So if you're looking to network, it's sort of like any kind of networking process in general. When you're just networking to networking, you're just getting to know each other, right? And you're looking at, what do I have to offer this person? How can we support each other? And, if there is an interest and a shared connection, there might be an invitation into the group, right? So it's just like any other networking invitation. So outside the group, you're getting to know people, and if they're a fit, if they're a good match for the culture of the group, inviting them into the group. Inside the group, people are getting to know each other just like they would in a networking, like an in-person networking group.
Right.
And, just like an in-person networking group, there are infinite ways that you can facilitate the conversation. So one of the things that I recommend to my clients is to do basically a weekly show in the group where you're offering value to the group. And so you're giving value to the group, you're mentoring, you're supporting, you're building that two-way conversation, because even if you're on Facebook Live, right? Mm-hmm. And then the live gets recorded and people can watch it on replay. So you're kind of putting yourself out there, but then they can respond in the comments thread. So you're building a two-way conversation, but then within the comments thread and later within the group, depending on how you facilitate the group, the members of the group are going to get to know each other. So they're networking with each other, which is one of the really fun things about running a group, is starting to watch the magic spark, right? Just like with any networking group. And then outside, then as people exit the group, that's the next question is, as with any sort of process, you're thinking like, what is the call to action? What do I want people to get out of this group? And the door is wide open, but from a business perspective, you're really looking at, how do I want to use this group in my business? Am I using the group as a way of cultivating leads? Am I using the group as a specific way to make offers within the group? Am I just using the group as a way to support my existing customers in my business? So there are a lot of different ways to use the group. And from a networking perspective, it's really about, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with the group as a way of connecting with people outside the group? How do you want to facilitate the group inside the group? And then what action are you either suggesting or facilitating or observing as people, move from the group and do things outside the group?
I think the challenge that people have with respect to groups, well, social media in general, is engagement. How do you get your people engaged? I mean, and there's always going to be a segment that doesn't, but
right.
And there'll be a segment that can't help themselves but do it. But it's kind of that 80% in the middle that trying to fire them up. Or maybe it's not 80%, but you know what I'm saying. There's a segment there that you can influence to post, comment, share, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so there's there are a lot of different ways. There's no one right answer to this question, first of all.
Sure.
But a few specific pieces that are really important. The first is that a bigger group is much, much easier to engage. So if you're really wanting to capitalize on Facebook groups, one of your first goals needs to be to build the group to at least 500 and preferably 1,000 people, because those are the benchmarks where it gets easier to engage the group.
Okay.
And the way that I suggest building the group to that level is by actually offering content that makes people want to join the group. So, for example, my group, the Entrepreneur Group, Ready to Launch, a creative incubator for women entrepreneurs, it's one of a bazillion entrepreneurship groups, right? So unless somebody already knows me and it likes me and is curious about me, they're really unlikely to choose this particular group out of all the other groups. So what I do that attracts people to the group is I create a specific class that I know from either research or I'm just curious that it might resonate. So like, I think last week my topic was how to find your high-end audience. And then this week it was self-care for entrepreneurs. And I said specifically, there's 3 specific mistakes that entrepreneurs make in self-care. And if you want to know what they are, I'm teaching a class about it. And so then I go and I network in the usual ways, which are some, phone conversations and email conversations, but a lot of just like hanging out in other groups or coming onto people's podcasts or whatever it is. And I say, hey, I'm teaching this class, would anybody be interested? And the people who are interested join specifically for that class. And that's how I build the group. And then usually for me, and I suggest this for my clients, once every 6 to 8 weeks, I do a 5-day workshop. And the workshop usually ends with an offer to my paid program. So that's one of the ways that I develop my business.
Right.
But the workshop itself, even if somebody doesn't join the paid program, is still great value. I offer a workshop that, a lot of people, my goal with every workshop is that people will say this is better than the last 2 or 3 paid programs I took. So, in March, when I first really pivoted to online in particular, I did Online Business Springboard. And it was specifically for, here's how, if you have a brick and mortar business and you want to go online, here's how you do it. And I give it all away. And I tell my clients this, like, don't be afraid of giving too much. This is one thing that people say, how do I know I'm not giving too much? Right. Don't be afraid of giving too much, because if you give it all away in 5 days, people are going to get really good value in 5 days. And the people who are a good match for you are going to want more. They're going to want the personal attention, the support through implementation, the accountability. So there's no such thing as giving too much in terms of like giving away your secrets. There is such a thing as giving too much as far as like overwhelming them. And so, every 6 to 8 weeks, I teach that 5-day workshop. It really builds the culture of the group. It builds the excitement of the group. It gives people a reason to join the group. And so I'm creating value for my clients and within the group. And then at the same time, I'm also making the offer and inviting people into my 6-month incubator.
Gotcha. No, I think that's smart. I like the whole notion of you can't give too much away. I'm a big proponent of that. I've written books, and people ask, how do you sell books? And I always tell them, give it away.
Yeah.
Not the book itself, but I've got a lot of interest in my books, a lot of interest in programs by just tweeting out little tidbits. And I always tell people, if someone were enterprising enough and gathered up all my little posts and that, they could have my book if they were that enterprising.
Yeah.
But they'd rather spend $12 just to kind of have it all all put together. Right. So there's a lot to that, and but you're right about the personal attention as well. You have some case studies you could share with us about your experiences? That would be great.
You want my experiences or let's do a little bit of both.
That'd be great. Yeah.
So, and I think it'd be cool. I'll share these case studies alongside giving some tips to people. Okay. So I'm just going to assume that if somebody's still listening to us right now, they're curious about Facebook groups and about how a group can serve them in their own business. And I just want to piggyback off of what you said about giving. Well, I said giving it all away, and you kind of piggybacked off of that. And so I'll just say, like, when you're creating content in your group, it's really about creating the relationship in the group. And so you don't necessarily need to make a sales pitch in the group to get people's attention, right? And in fact, I think most of us who have sales as part of our job really don't want to come across as always selling, or, most people don't want to be pitchy. They don't want to be pushy in sales.
They want people to come to you and buy. I want to buy from you, Christina. That's what I want.
Yeah, and they will if you you create really good content. So here's my suggestion. So one of the things that I like to do, this is one of my top performing tactics, is to bring in an existing client or a recent client who's totally interested in appearing. So I'm not forcing anyone. It's somebody who really wants to do it. And I bring them in and I interview them on Facebook Live. And I'm interviewing them specifically about their experience. So I'm not saying, hey, give me a testimonial on Facebook Live, but it's really about them and what they have to offer. And, but I ask them questions in the context of the work that we're doing together. So the way that my sort of ballpark template way to frame it is, I say, okay, so before you and I were working together, what was your life like? And then now that after we've worked together, now that you're at this point, what's going on for you? And then what was the thing that we did that made the difference? And then now that you have experienced this difference, what are you creating in your life, or what are you creating in your business? And then from there, because I work with really cool people. I work with entrepreneurs, so they have amazing stories and amazing wisdom to share. And so they'll share what they're working on and what's going on. And it becomes a really interesting story for people, usually a lot of information that people take away from it. So the case study is my client, Jennifer Sconyers, who she's out there on my website. She has appeared in interviews many times in my Facebook group. And she came on with me for a Facebook Live a couple of years ago and just did this wonderful interview. There's a little snippet on my website, theprovidencemethod.com. She did this wonderful interview about how the work that we did together helped her get back in touch with her creativity, as opposed to just, doing the work, but she's a really hard worker, right? So she was like, rather than just grinding away, and just, self-care at the time was just yoga and working out. She said, when we started working together, I started really understanding how the creative process was really important in my business. And that really helped her break through burnout in particular, and helped her launch her business, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion training. And so that launched her into entrepreneurship. She launched herself, but she was talking about some of the work that we did together. And after that interview, I got, I think, 3 or 4 inquiries into my business, and at least 2 I can think of off the top of my head have become high-level coaching clients of mine. So I had a huge month that month. I received some really wonderful inquiries and created some relationships of people who had kind of been hanging around, curious, and that particular interview just really kicked it off. And it also kicked off, I think for Jen, it like catalyzed some things for her.
Right.
So bringing people into the group specifically for interviews can attract attention for the guest in a really helpful way. And it can also spark the members of the group. And some of those members of the group, if they're looking at you as the expert, may reach out and ask to continue the conversation. And then whatever you're doing in your business that furthers those conversations, wherever you desire to take them or whatever makes sense for you. It's just a way of, nurturing, whether you're nurturing leads, nurturing relationships, giving support, whatever it is, that type of content can do that.
Okay. This is great. How could the audience help you? How could they find you? And I can certainly put stuff in the show notes. I've got the providencemethod.com. I'll put in the show notes. But how can they help you?
How can they help me? Well, I think having been mentored by amazing networking professionals such as yourself, I would say that the best thing for me would be if somebody is listening to what I'm saying and they feel like what I'm sharing would be of value to them. So if you're curious about what I'm saying, if you want to learn more, if you resonate with some of these ideas that I'm tossing out there, then I invite you to join my group, Ready to Launch, a creative incubator for women entrepreneurs. And if you're a gentleman or you don't identify as a woman, you're invited to give me a like on my Facebook page, Christina Providence. That's my professional page. And reach out to me in a direct message, because I absolutely welcome conversations and, whatever is resonating. I'll just be curious and interested to hear what we could create.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.